This conference will now be recorded.
There we go. And we've got a PowerPoint to share with you guys as well. And so I just wanted to kind of briefly, we're going to introduce ourselves and kind of go through our background and our history. And the goal of this webinar is not only one to address some of the changes that are coming down the pipeline with COVID and how that's going to impact the match this year. But, you know, as we got together and discussed things, you know, we realized we really just want to help people that don't have a program, or maybe the people that feel really vulnerable right now. And so, you know, we all came from a pretty difficult circumstance to match. We're all osteopathic. And as you guys know, out of the match, maybe 5 to 10, 15 people match every year with the DO behind their name. We each feel like we've got something we can share with you tonight that would be helpful. And we hope you'll reach out to us if you feel like you need it. We're always there for you. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I will go ahead and just start sharing my screen. Bear with us here as this is new to us. We've tried to kind of troubleshoot the most we could with this platform, but it's a little buggy and it's definitely not Zoom. So give us just a minute to get things started. Okay. Let's see. Can you guys see that?
Yeah, yes. We can see it.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, so here's all of us. This is the team of people that I assembled today to kind of go through things. We represent PGY, I guess, 0 to PGY 4. And so various levels of background here. So my name is Dave Felsted. This is my family, my wife and 4 kids. I have a bachelor's degree in accounting from Brigham Young University. I did not grow up in Utah. I grew up in South Bend, Indiana in the Midwest. I went to Arizona College of Osteopathic Medicine and got my DO. And then I matched at Spokane Transitional Medicine for my PGY1, which was an awesome year. Highly recommend it if you can still do that. I think those things have changed quite a bit. So PGY 2 through 4 for me happened at Medical College of Georgia. I'm entering into my last month. And then after that, I'll be pursuing private practice up in northern Arizona to do comprehensive cataract and refractive surgery. After I matched as a DO, I did write an article that I thought was really helpful. You can see at the link down there. It's written out of the DO, but it's definitely, I think, useful for everyone that's looking to get in and go through the process. And then you can always follow along with me on Instagram, which I think where some of you guys have found me. Most of my stuff I post is about my family life in and out of medicine. So when I started out on the process of thinking I could do ophthalmology, my wife was my biggest cheerleader. And the main quote we would look at all the time is the one by Henry David Thoreau, "Go confidently in the direction of your dreams." I put this on my wall and just looked at it almost every day, because there's so many days when you're wanting to match and think you just can't do it. As you look at the mountain of stuff you've got to get through, you often feel like this, kind of alone on this very narrow journey where it's easy to fall off and get hurt. But just know if you are dedicated and really want it, you can do it. And all of us have those examples today of being able to do that. So as I thought about, you know, what could I offer to help the people coming up behind me, and I'm very passionate about that. I just want you guys to all realize that this is an unusual time in an unusual application cycle. It's going to have an altered timeline and programs are acting unpredictably. But realize you do have an extra month or maybe 2 on your side. And if you feel like you're unprepared, you may consider taking a research year. And I think we'll have Tamzid kind of discuss that. But if you feel, hey, this is not going to work out in my stars right now, it's not aligned, then consider taking a research year. Remember that everyone is in a boat of uncertainty right now, including program directors and program coordinators. So now is a great time for innovation, creativity. Consider reaching out to industry, mentors, academic contacts, non-academic contacts. Now's the time to innovate. I urge you guys to continue to gently network, keep branching out, reaching out. It's not going to hurt you. And prepare well in advance for a virtual interview. You know, as I thought about the application, you know, 40 to 50% of it is the paper, and maybe 50 to 60% of it is what you do in person on match day, on interview day, the night before, the hospital tour, and a lot of that is going to be cut out, or, you know, right now it's kind of up in the air. And so important to get a really good 45 to 60-minute interview with these programs. And so I kind of thought about, well, what does that look like, or how can you prepare? You know, most of it is going to be how you present yourself on camera. And so this is some of the stuff I found on the net. So having your largest light source either right in front of you or no more than 45 degrees away. Be aware that your screen can be a large source of light, have a lot of natural background light. The only acceptable camera angle should be head on at eye level, which most of us on this webinar right now are doing. Photo booth yourself to check video before you enter a phone call. Hide your video preview from yourself while you're talking. Tendency is to look straight at yourself on the screen, and then that distracts from you actually interviewing with the people in front of you. Test different microphone sources in advance. I think I'd recommend you not have a pair of earphones in. It's a little bit distracting and it makes you a little bit impersonal. Make sure your laptop or computer is charged. I think that would be really bad if you were at 30% battery and 45 minutes in, you're at 0% battery. Make sure you wear a full outfit just in case you need to stand up and you're not wearing pants. Give thought into what you have in the background. Remember that when we get done interviewing, all this gets compiled and then people meet in a meeting. And I speak not only about my program, but several others that I know of. They have a match meeting where, you know, all the applicants their files are prepared in advance and then they're gone over and discussed. And what people remember most is the interview, and I'm sure they're going to remember the background. So, you know, think about what you have behind you and think about what could be memorable and classy. So I thought, you know, maybe nature, classy artwork, house plants, rooms with good natural light, anything but just like a blank wall. So the AUOPO does have a timeline that they've put out. It looks about a month later than normal. So I think you've got an extra month to kind of get some ducks in a row if you've got some other things you want to wrap up, including research. So a little bit more time to plan, prepare, and get things done. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Harris.
Thank you so much. So my name is Harris Ahmed. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I did my undergrad at UC Irvine and my MPH at USC, where I concentrated in health policy. I did my medical school at the Burrell College of Osteopathic Medicine, which is in New Mexico, and I matched back home at Loma Linda. So for those of you who don't know, in the state of New Mexico, there are no ophthalmology programs. And so I also came from a new school, so we had no department. We had not even a single ophthalmology faculty, no student that had ever matched there before. Also, you know, even locally in Las Cruces, there was maybe 3 or 4 ophthalmologists. So we're gonna get into that a little bit later, and I'm gonna talk about how I was able to kind of overcome and mitigate those challenges that I faced. In terms of interests, you know, I love health policy, the Lakers. I'm looking forward to the NBA season resuming and them winning another championship, and medical education. And in terms of my intern year, my program is integrated, so I'll be doing that at Loma Linda as well. So if we can go to the next slide. As David mentioned earlier, there's a new timeline for this cycle, and it's basically been delayed about 2 to 4 weeks. And this is a nice, very aesthetically pleasing graphic that was shared with us by the SF match. And it kind of goes over each date and deadline that you should consider. The thing that I wanted to kind of emphasize on this graph is you see September 15th is listed as the target date for your application submission. But I think, especially for students without home programs, that we should be looking for every advantage we can. And so maybe target 2 to 4 weeks before September 15th to have your application in, because admissions are, usually done on a rolling basis and rolling admission. So if you can get your application in first, that's going to be beneficial to you. So maybe go, 2 or 4 weeks before that September 15th. And again, we'll be sharing this slide with you later, so you guys will have it. Next slide, please. So, when we first started this was supposed to be a very casual, just discussion with, 6 residents from across the country, and we were just going to share some advice and insight. And it kind of blew up on Twitter, and we've had various stakeholders reach out to us directly and share insight information. And so we're going to try to share that insight information the best as we can, and direct you to them in areas we can't kind of, give that information directly. So, the first stakeholder we want to talk to you about is the Coalition for Physician Accountability. So that is, an organization that basically constitutes every single medical education entity in the United States on the MD and DO side. So it includes the AMA, the AOA, the LCME, who accredits medical schools, the NBME and NBOME, which is the licensing entities, ACGME, basically every, alphabet soup organization that exists in America is part of this working group. And they issued recommendations, and those are published by the AAMC, and we'll have those recommendations for you in that document that we'll be sending afterwards. Essentially, they made several recommendations. The first recommendation was that, away rotations should be discouraged. However, there was an exception made for those students that are interested in a program in which they don't have a home program. So that's majority of you on this call, right? You don't have a home program for ophthalmology. You fall into that exception as published by the AAMC. And we spoke with the SF Match, and SF Match has told us that they are also sticking to that recommendation, meaning that they also recommend that ophthalmology programs allow students without home programs to still rotate. And the question may arise, how can you make that happen? So there's another document, that link we're going to send you, on how you and your medical school can execute that exception and make sure that you still get an away rotation, even though it's been recommended generally for you not to have one. So we're going to have that for you as well. And it's really going to be important for you to really take initiative and be an advocate for yourself and work with your school and reach out to those programs and get those aways, because it's still recommended that you get them. Another thing that was told to us by the SF Match and the American Academy of Ophthalmology, a representative from them, was that they are working on formal recommendations and documents that are soon to be published on their website. So keep your eyes on the SF Match website and American Academy of Ophthalmology. They're actively working on recommendations, and they're creating a frequently asked questions tab on the SF Match. And they asked us to tell you guys to please share your questions today in this webinar on the group chat. There's a chat box in this meeting. You can put your questions in there. And the questions that you guys ask us today and that you put in there, or you can tweet and email me afterwards, I'm going to send those questions to the SF Match. And then on the basis of your questions, they're going to create a frequently asked questions page. So whatever you guys ask today is going to be given to them directly, this evening. The other entity that I'm going to talk to you about is the AOCOO. And for some of you, this may be a very confusing acronym. You may be wondering, what the heck is AOCOO? And that is basically the American Osteopathic College of Ophthalmology. For some background, for those of you who don't know, there was a single accreditation process between MDs and DOs in 2014 that was started. As a result of that single accreditation process, basically all MD and DO residencies came under the ACGME. So that process is now complete. And as a result of that, there are 7 new ophthalmology programs that used to be accredited by the American Osteopathic Association. They're now a part of the ACGME. And those 7 programs, we spoke with the executive director of this organization, they're still conducting rotations. But they did say that the rotations that they're conducting are more virtual in nature, and there's not that much patient volume. But it is my opinion, again, this is all our opinion, my opinion is that you should still do those rotations, because it's an opportunity to get to know the program. It's an opportunity to get to know the faculty, see the program, see the residents, even if the patient experience is not that much. Another thing I want to mention before I get to the last point of individual programs is that the SF Match, one, has, as we know, are still allowing away recommendations for those without home programs. Number 2, they are delaying the timeline as well. And number 3, they're going to issue further advice or guidance based on the questions you ask. Now, there are some individual programs who reached out to us and they've shared what they're doing. And for example, University of Utah, they're still accommodating rotators without a home program. You just have to contact them. And depending on their capacity, they will, consider you and take you. And they're also doing at University of Utah virtual tours. They're doing online content for applicants, so you can kind of get to know their faculty and the culture of their program. And you should expect more programs to be doing things like that, virtual, tours, virtual videos, things of that nature. Emory, they did a 4-week remote ophthalmology elective, and they are going to publish the data and kind of, their experience on how that worked. And so that's another avenue for you to look into in the future. And then can we go to the next slide, please? So our document, originally we were going to have the document available within the meeting, but GoToWebinar, we were having some logistical difficulties. So long story short, if you want this document, you're going to have to email me, or you can tweet me afterwards and I'll send you this document. The things that are included on this document is probably number one is the most valuable asset is we have a list of ophthalmologists who have committed to mentoring you, and they're willing to speak with you and guide you this cycle. They want to give you some research opportunities and any general advice. And these are programs, directors and residents and faculty and fellows from programs across the country. And you can see the list. We have faculty and residents from Iowa, Bascom Palmer, UCLA, Vanderbilt, Emory, so on and so forth. So that list is there for you. It'll be contained in that document with their contact information. And again, that's kind of a preference is being given to those students without home programs for them to use that list. Number two, the document's going to include a survey. And this is a survey that's being done by Dr. Andrea Tooley, who I'm sure all of you know who that is, and at MentorMeMD, and Dr. Janice Law from Vanderbilt. And that's basically a mentorship program that you can sign up for. This is for all students, and it's a survey you have to fill out. And we are including the link to that survey in this document that I can send to you. And number three in this document is going to be the technical things we discussed, the AMC recommendations, how your school and you can get yourself away rotations despite the discouragement of OAs in general. And included in the document is a list of those former AOA programs that are now accredited by the ACGME, and they're open to both MD and DO applicants. And if you email me, at this email address, I'll send you that document as soon as you send me an email. And so now we're basically going to go into kind of the advice section, and some general brief advice that I have for you is, for me, I was in a state, like I mentioned, without an ophthalmology program. I didn't have access to any ophthalmologist at my school. We didn't have a department. The nearest program was University of Arizona, 4.5 hours away. So I was fortunate that my third-year clinical rotations were in Arizona, in Tucson. I was able to select that, and I did that on purpose because I knew there was a program there. And what I did is I emailed the chairman of University of Arizona, and I introduced myself, and I said, this is who I am. I would love to meet you. And I was lucky enough that he responded, and he invited me to grand rounds. And when I attended the grand rounds, and I ended up going to grand rounds every week for the entire year. And I was honestly the only student there. There was maybe 2 or 3 other students that attended grand rounds, but they were students that were required to be there as a result of their rotation. So people started noticing me that, I introduced myself to people without being overbearing, of course. I got, research opportunities, shadowing opportunities, and a letter of recommendation as a result of taking that initiative. So definitely email programs, coordinators, directors, faculty, and it's okay if you don't get a response, that's okay, but it's our job to just at least try, and you can live with the results afterwards. The second thing I did was I use social media a lot, and I slid into DMs. There's a very handsome ophthalmologist. His name is Dr. Rob Melendez. He has a great set of hair. I DM'd him, and I, told him this is who I am, and I'm from New Mexico. He was in New Mexico, and I said, I'd love to have an opportunity to shadow you. And he gave me that opportunity. So in the middle of my OB-GYN rotation, I drove 4.5 hours. I used an excuse to get off early, and I drove up there, and I spent the day with him, and then I came back the following day. And I made sure I followed up with him and other physicians, via social media. Dr. Felsted is another guy who I slid into his DMs and, communicated with him, and he guided me a lot throughout the process. So definitely utilize social media and Twitter and Instagram in particular. And the last thing I'll mention is, away rotations. For me and for you, many of you who don't have home programs, we have to do away rotations. You have to do as many as you can. With COVID, that's going to be a little bit limited in how many you can do. But in my time, I did 4 away rotations, and I did 2-week rotations. And I did save my last rotation for the end, which was my dream program, which was Loma. I did a 4-week rotation at the end, and just know that you could get burned out because you have done so many rotations and now you're doing another full week at the end. So keep that in mind. You got to pace yourself. But that was my approach. And I did a grand rounds presentation. I think you should always volunteer, even if it's a 2-week, do a grand rounds presentation, because it gives you an opportunity to show that you are articulate, that you don't get nervous, really, you can speak, you can communicate complex topics in a controlled environment, you have a presence, things like that are extremely important. And have situational awareness is the last point when you go on OAs or in your interactions in general. If you determine that your attending is a little bit more, maybe less talkative, you should be less talkative. If they're very outward and they like to talk and discuss all these things, then you should be the same way. And if you're in clinic and you see that they're kind of getting behind and they're busy, don't slow them down and ask them a bunch of questions. And if they look like they have some more time, patients are canceling, then go ahead and ask questions. And when you're on the slit lamp, if the attending says, hey, I want you to look at this, don't sit there and like for like 5 minutes or forever and just try to really get what's, just go in there and go out. Basically go in and see what you need to see and get out. Don't be inefficient or waste too much time. And so with that, that pretty much ends my portion. We can go on to the other advice.
Thanks, Harris. You brought up so many wonderful points. And again, like I said, this will be recorded. We'll give you guys, the document that he's talked about, as well as our PowerPoint. But there's so much that can be gleaned from what he just said about situational awareness and just being adaptive, and just really sitting back and watching for a minute what's going on in clinic. So yeah, thank you so much. I just want to make a comment that I have sat and talked to each one of these people on the webinar tonight, and looked at their applications as they have applied, and they all have stellar, awesome applications. And so what they're saying tonight is really true. It's just so impactful, and it's going to help you guys out so much. So with that, we'll move on to Sheena.
All right, thanks so much, Dave. So hi, everyone. My name is Sheena Song, and I'm an incoming resident at St. John's in New York. So I just wanted to share a little bit about my journey to ophthalmology. The first time I was actually exposed to ophthalmology was as an undergrad at UC Berkeley. I worked as an optometric assistant at the Berkeley School of Optometry, and that's really where my interest in vision started to brew. I found myself hungry for every opportunity to learn about eyes and found myself volunteering at optometry clinics as well as going to vision science courses. In addition, I knew I was interested in education as well as global health. So after college, I did a program called Teach for China as well as Education and Sight, which is where we brought local eye providers to our school to do vision screenings. And at this point, I knew that I wanted to become some sort of eye doctor. I didn't know too much about ophthalmology yet, so I decided to work as an ophthalmic medical assistant at a private practice for a few years before medical school, and I just loved it. I loved learning about different eye pathology. I loved the patient interaction, and of course, I loved seeing the tangible results of eye surgery. So this is when I decided to commit myself to going to medical school in order to pursue ophthalmology. However, this was an extremely daunting task. I went to Touro University in California, and like Harris, I also didn't have an ophthalmology department. There were no ophthalmic faculty on board, and there were very few people from a medical school who had ever gone into ophthalmology before. But I can tell you from where I am today that there is a way to get there. Like Harris, I also sought opportunities outside of my medical school. I found a mentor at UCLA and continued to reach out to different mentors, just like Harris, through social media as well. So I am so excited. I'm going to be starting ophthalmology next year. I feel super blessed. It feels like I'm living a dream. So I just want to let you know that it's possible, and definitely feel free to email me or reach out in the future. Next, please. So I just wanted to touch on a couple of points that we all knew about before. However, given COVID and the new situation, I do think that there is going to be a lot more weight placed on things like letters of recommendations, as well as phone calls from mentors. And so I copied and pasted this screenshot from the AUPO website about the new policy on letter of recs. And a lot of people have asked me where to get, like, who should I get my letter from? And so my answer is always, it's most important to get a quality letter from any physician who really knows you well, someone who you've developed a relationship with. And I think that will trump even a letter from an ophthalmologist. Given that, if you do have options, a letter from an ophthalmologist at an academic institution, especially one that's affiliated with a residency program, is more likely to weigh heavily than, let's say, your local ophthalmologist. And that's simply because your program director is more likely to know someone in academics. In addition, you want to make your letter writer's job a lot easier by providing these letter packets. In my letter packets, I use things like I included my CV, my resume. I wrote paragraphs about qualities that I wanted my letter writer to highlight. And we know that our mentors are super busy, so it's really important to provide them with all the information from when you rotated with them, what you did with them, with specific stories. That's going to make their life a lot easier. You want to ask for more letters than you need. It's always better to have more letters if possible than be struggling to find letters at the end. That way you could choose the best one. Next, though, some letters, so, oh, I'm sorry, I'm at the next point. Some letter writers prefer to waive their rights to the letter. However, if possible, I do recommend that you read the letter beforehand. For example, there might be some grammatical errors. Your attending may not have time to review your letter, or God forbid, if they copy and pasted some part of someone else's letter to yours, you don't want there to be any mix-ups. Last but not least, it's really important to have your letter in as soon as possible. I recommend 1 month before the deadline. You don't want to be that person who's struggling to get a letter 3 days before the deadline. Next slide. I wanted to touch in on the elusive topic of phone calls from mentors, and I think this is a topic that a lot of students tend to stray away from because it seems sly, or it's something you see on Reddit and SDN. However, I just wanted to throw in this fact, which is that your mentors really want to see you succeed. They want to be involved with your process, and oftentimes they feel privileged to be able to help you with this process. And a phone call or an email or another letter of recommendation can have such a huge weight, especially in this time of quarantine where we're not able to spend in-person time with the program anymore. So with that said, make sure to do research on faculty at different programs. It's a really small world, and you might find that your mentor went to the same fellowship or residency program as a program director, and that is going to carry a lot of weight with it. In terms of when to make those phone calls, it's recommended that these phone calls happen after an interview while the program director is making the rank list. However, I put in a caveat that phone calls can really be made at any stage of the application process. For example, if there is a program you really want to match at, it's your dream program, and you haven't even heard back from them for an interview, there might be a chance that you've already been rejected from an interview. So at this point, I say it doesn't hurt to ask your mentor to make a phone call. The worst that can happen is that you still get rejected. Again, your mentors really want to be there for you, and this could be the difference between you matching at your dream program versus you not getting an interview at all. Like letters of recommendation, you want to make this process as easy for your mentor as possible. So that means providing information for them, as well as providing the program director's email address, as well as phone number and/or best time of the day to reach that program. Last but not least, remember to send a thank you to your mentors. They really want to see you succeed. A lot of my mentors reached out to me even after match day just to sort of check in, and I think it's a courteous thing to do to just kind of keep them in the loop. So that's all from me. And guys, make sure, if you have any questions, definitely feel free to email. I'm really happy to talk outside of this later on.
Yeah, Sheena, I really appreciate what you said about how much your mentors want to see you succeed, because I think, as I've watched you guys all apply and get accepted, I've invested time into you, and it's important to me. And so just as much as you invest into a mentor, they'll invest into you. And so continue. I think the main point you guys can take away from this webinar tonight is just to keep networking, keep making that relationship stronger with your mentors. Let them know this is your passion, and bring more trust into the situation. I think back on what I did in my early days of ophthalmology, trying to get in. It's so much about trying to do favors for other people. For me, it was helping out on data crunching and research. I offered to work in a clinic for free for 4 months. And so those early experiences in my application cycle were so valuable, not only for my own learning, but I think my mentor really appreciated it too. So with that, we'll go on to Ryan. Ryan's unfortunately having some webcam issues, but can he unmute his mic? We might need to come back.
I'm here, Dave. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Ryan.
We're good to go. I'm just working on that complete outfit right now. But I'm glad you can hear me. So yeah, it's good to be here, guys. My name is Ryan Machiele. I'm a first year starting at UNC Chapel Hill, matched into Ophtho here. And I graduated from Campbell University, which is like one of those new DO schools. I was the first to match Ophtho from my school. And I really wanted to be here tonight just to sort of share that experience, because I'm hoping and imagining and assuming actually that there's probably some people out there who are listening right now who are kind of in that position, or in the very least feel kind of like they're alone in what they're doing. That was kind of my experience. Even heading into third year, I think I knew what I wanted to do. I'd been pursuing it for a while, but for sure did not necessarily know anyone else who was doing that. And I think I felt pretty alone in that. So I actually just heard about Dr. Felsted from a buddy who had Instagram, and that I started following along. I reached out to him pretty quick just to get some guidance. And that sort of snowballed into really seeking out a lot of guidance and mentorship from a lot of people, which really has made all the difference. So I think that's going to be the main thing I want to harp on tonight, is just the importance of getting a mentor, the importance of reaching out, maybe how to do that a little bit, but just really that's what we all need to be doing all the time. I think if we can go to the next slide, I'll just jump into that. One of the most important things I do want to emphasize too is that, and something I really only appreciate in retrospect, is that ophthalmology is like an extremely collegial field. I think I've probably never met a single faculty or resident anywhere that wasn't willing to at least give me feedback on something or support me with something. And that's a rare thing, especially, speaking with my colleagues who matched into other fields who maybe had uphill battles getting into other fields. That's not something you see in a lot of specialties, but ophthalmology, I mean, by and large, the mentorship and the advice that I received was excellent all around. And I cold called a lot of people, including Dave Felsted here. And all of those people were extremely supportive.
I'm sorry, I'm going to pause you for just a second.
Yeah.
I'm getting another program director that's coming in the line here. So let me come back to you in just a second. Let me just see if I can add them in. It's Dr. Henderson and Dr. Chadha. Maybe Harris also, if you can help get them added. Okay, Dr. Hendershot, I've unmuted you. Let me just see if I can stop my screen share for just a second.
I've also unmuted Dr. Chadha as well.
Okay.
Hi there.
See if I can just get their cameras up.
If not, I think audio, even if just the audio message would be great.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not letting me add their camera. Dr. Hendershot, do you mind starting us out?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Yeah. So, I mean, you guys have been giving really great advice so far. I appreciate you letting me talk, because it's like I'm, in Ohio, so East Coast time, and it's already a little past my bedtime. I'm an early bedtime kind of guy. The notes I was taking just during the first couple presentations, the SF match is delaying that timeline. I think one of the things you'll probably see in the FAQ they release is to be real careful looking at programs' timelines. Some programs kind of set their own timelines, slightly different from the SF matches guidelines. So, if there's a program you're really dead set on, make sure you're kind of keeping tabs on their website. to make sure that, even though the SF match deadline is a little bit later, some programs may have deadlines earlier for a variety of reasons. And then, still doing the away rotations is still kind of way up in the air, I think, at this point. We've all read the AAMC and the other sources you guys cited about exceptions for visiting students. One of the issues that you might run into with programs, and you would probably find this out if you communicate directly with them, is they may not be able to have you. Even though there was this exception from the SF match and the AAMC and everything else, it's possible that, my medical center, just won't let people come. So obviously, communicate and be open. And then the one thing I was going to say that I think, other programs are going to certainly start doing, we've been piloting with one of our own medical students this month, is a virtual rotation. So one of our Ohio State medical students, they're not allowed to be anywhere, including in our offices. So he, Dr. Michael Wells, who's our med student coordinator, and Meredith Hess, who is our program coordinator, who is, I think, also on the call, kind of came up with this brainchild and kind of helped execute it. So this, we have 2 iPhones, I think, that we can kind of use for this at this time. We're kind of getting more. So we basically FaceTime with our medical student who's just sitting in his apartment. And we have a stand, and we kind of carry him in with us. Our techs will talk to the patients ahead of time, get another consent. And then I just like, hey, I have a med student, it's Mubarak this month. He's with me. I set them down there. They can kind of watch. And then at least one slit lamp in all of our exam rooms has kind of a teaching scope we can clip that iPhone into. And he can see through the slit lamp during part of that. And then we kind of clip him back out, and he watches the rest of the conversation. They can, and I think we will be able to get access for medical students outside of Ohio State to be able to access like the charts. So he can kind of log into our IHIS, our EPIC EHR, and he can be looking at, their past visits and why they're there and all that kind of stuff. So we are starting to do that with visiting medical students as well. I was texting my program coordinator because I don't have those details, but they should be under the Ohio State section of the visiting, the VSAS. So there should be some details there. Obviously, we, can't accommodate everybody, but that, hopefully some other programs will be doing things like that to, let you guys get kind of a taste of places. I think all the other advice you guys are giving is incredible. And I'm sure there's more good advice to be had. I see Dr. Oetting just signed in, so at least I got in before. I don't have to follow that.
Hello there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hendershot. We appreciate everything.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. Dr. Chadha, do you want to go next? You're still on mute. Do you have the ability to unmute your mic? Let's see if I can do it.
Gotcha. Okay. I hope I'm showing up now. I found the camera button here. So, hi, everyone. I'm Nisha Chadha. I'm the medical student educator at New York Engineer Infirmary of Mount Sinai. I just wanted to applaud all of you for putting this together. What a great way to, navigate during this time. I don't hopefully be saying anything or apologize if I'm restating anything that's already been discussed. I think, the key is that this is evolving for all of us. And so we're trying to, of course, keep everyone updated as things evolve. But I think to echo what I've heard already in terms of away rotations is, I think local programs are going to try to accommodate, if they can, students that don't have programs. I think another thing to consider is if there are any large private practice groups that are willing to teach, particularly under these circumstances. From the application perspective, we're just looking to see that you've had a meaningful ophthalmology experience and what you've taken away from that's informed your decision to pursue this field. And in addition to away rotations, I think pursuing scholarly activity, particularly during this time, is a great way to kind of demonstrate your interest. For better or for worse, a lot of faculty in ophthalmology have had a little bit more time over the past 2 months to, push projects forward and maybe looking for students to help with that. In New York, unfortunately, we've been impacted pretty significantly. And so the Icahn School of Medicine is not allowing us to accept visiting students at this time. I don't anticipate that changing, but we are, monitoring that very closely, and, on a case-by-case basis, we would certainly try to assist with providing opportunities to students that don't have home programs, but it really, ultimately is in the hands of the med school. So, in speaking with our program director today, he wanted to kind of share that he would be looking for, again, just any opportunity that kind of you have as a student to explore ophthalmology, whether it be in a local program or with a private practice, and then scholarly activity. So I hope that provides some information.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you guys all coming on and helping and giving your input from your individual programs and from a national level as well. So all good advice, and we really appreciate it. We'll go ahead and unmute Dr. Oetting's microphone now.
Hello.
Hey, now we can hear you.
Very good. Well, hey, listen, I appreciate this opportunity to talk to y'all. This is a really difficult time, and those of you that are applying, I just want to tell you how sorry I am that it's been so tricky, and I know it's been a very, very difficult few months, especially for you. We are in a similar situation in Iowa where we're not allowing anybody to come in for outside rotations. The problem we have is our own students here have not had the opportunity to rotate through ophthalmology. So the few opportunities that we have, we're sort of using for our own students. And that makes it difficult for people that want to come here and sort of see what we're about. It's also going to be a particularly odd year because our intention, at least now, is to do the interviews virtually. And so that will make it even harder to sort of experience Iowa. We're really nervous about it, to be honest with you, because a lot of people don't visit places like Iowa except for in a scary way. They're sort of scared to come there. If you're from the East or West Coast, they're wondering what it's like, and so we don't have the opportunity to sell, our town and our location and our fellow residents as well. So we're just as nervous about this, I think, as you all are. And so I do feel like it's going to be a situation where we're really we're both trying new things, and both you as an applicant and us as a program. And I think for that reason, it's going to be okay, because we're just as nervous and scared about this process as you all are. And so we're going to pay more attention, and we're going to try to be more attentive to things. I wouldn't worry that much about the fact you haven't had a lot of ophthalmology. Our own students haven't had a lot of ophthalmology, and they're in a place with a big ophthalmology department. So if you're in a program that doesn't have a big ophthalmology department, there's a reason people are going to understand what's going on. What I would do is I would excel with the opportunities that you're given. And I would, if you're in New York, and I know it's been hard there, and you've excelled given the situation there, then that's going to be what we're going to be excited to hear about and what we're going to know about. If you're in a place where you've been closed down and you've taken advantage of that to the best of your abilities by writing or reading or doing projects, then that's what we're going to want to hear about. So it's going to be a different year, but I don't want you to worry too much about that. I just want you to explain in your personal statement what happened, what the effects of this were, and we'll read that and we'll have a sense for where it's coming. So we also don't know how many people are going to apply to ophthalmology. That's going to be a big mystery, right? I mean, it may be that everybody wants to go into pulmonary medicine or ICU where all the action is, right? I mean, it may be that there's only a couple hundred people that apply. Or it may be that 2 million apply because they're chicken like me and they're scared of things like ICUs. I don't know, but we'll have to see how it goes. But I want you to realize that some of our best residents we've had at Iowa, for example, Dr. Glockenflecken, who those of you on Twitter must know, he went to a medical school that had very little ophthalmology, and so his application when he applied had almost no ophthalmology, but we could see that there was a diamond in the rough there. I mean, and he was rough, just like you can imagine as a resident. Imagine what it was like for me, him teasing me all the time. But so I think, again, I just can't emphasize enough that the important thing is to help us see how you excelled with what the opportunity was presented to you, and that's what we want to see. Any specific questions? I apologize if you got. I just came on. I apologize, but any specific questions or secret fears people have?
You guys can jump on the chat box and ask away if you want. Now's a really pristine time to talk to the program director of Iowa, which, by the way, I don't think you need to sell the city or the town of Iowa for your program for anybody on this webinar that's looking to match.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It is a nice little town. Let's talk about Iowa City. No, let's not talk about Iowa City, but it's a great little town, and usually people come here from the East and West Coast and they're super nervous, and then after they've been here a while, they kind of want to stay. So it's not bad.
One of the members is asking, what are the key attributes program directors look for in an applicant?
Well, I think program directors have a different perspective than, say, other people on the committee might. So program directors in general are looking for people that are not going to cause any trouble. They're looking for people that are going to be good soldiers and are going to be good teammates. So whenever a program director is on a committee, that's kind of what they're looking for, because basically program directors have their world of make-believe, which includes schedules and people showing up and things like that. Now, chairmen on committees might have a totally different perspective. Our chairman's looking for somebody that's going to make a lot of money and donate a lot of money in a few years, right? I mean, that's what chairmen think about. Right. The research people on our committee, they're looking for people that are going to contribute in some way to that world. So our committee is composed of a variety of different people. So we always have 2 residents that help us with sort of getting people similar to what we have now. We have me, and then we have our chairman, and then 2 other faculty. And usually the other 2 faculty are more research oriented. And so I think everybody has their own little bias, but in general, to get at your question, program directors are looking for people that are going to come in and be really good with patients. They're going to be team players, and they're going to be good soldiers, work hard, not cause any trouble. Okay. That's not always the same as what chairmen look for.
Dr. Oetting, let me ask you this. A lot of people are asking on our forum, about the change to pass-fail for step 1. How is that going to impact programs as far as choosing applicants? And then the other question is, how can they reach out during this time where they can't rotate very well? Is it kosher to do this, one-on-one from emails or phone calls? How do they do that?
The lack of step 1, of a quantitative step 1 is an issue for us, because you have to remember, you just have to put yourself in the shoes of the people looking at your application. And from our point of view, it's very difficult to tell if you excelled at your medical school compared to another medical school. It's very hard to tell, because I don't know if everybody at I don't know, at NYU or something always gets honors. I don't know that. It's hard to tell. You can sometimes figure it out if you have the luxury of having the dean's letter. And so as a result of that, there's a tremendous amount of importance on step 1, on AOA, on gold humanism, on things like research, CV kind of stuff, and then letters of recommendation. And so what's so sad to me, and I hate to even tell our medical students this, but the truth of the matter is, even our own medical school, it's hard for me to sort out their CV. it's hard for me to sort. I don't know which classes are hard. I don't know which ones are easy. And so you just have to realize that from the point of view of programs. There's also some correlation between performance on step 1 and eventually passing the ophthalmology written boards. And one of our goals is to have all of our graduates pass that exam. And so so selfishly, if we bring in people that are really good at taking tests, we don't have to worry as much about that test. Now, if we were a really good program, I can see you guys are thinking this. If we were a really good program, we would bring in the worst people taking tests, and we prove that we could make them good, right? But that's unfortunately, selfishly, that's not what we're doing. So the lack of that ability to sort of quantify the step 1 is probably going to lead us, I don't know for sure, but probably going to lead us to look at step 2.
Yeah.
Which probably is a better measure of clinical skills and stuff. So I don't know, we haven't decided to do that as a program yet, but probably that's where we're headed. We still have another year to delay that decision. But I hate to say that. I believe me, I would not have done well. Our dogs are going crazy, sir. I would not have done well on either of these tests. When I went into ophthalmology, we took the boards at the end of medical school, believe it or not. And then what was your second question? I'm sorry, David.
How do applicants during this crazy time period reach out cordially, or kind of contact programs to kind of develop I don't know, like a connection?
We are interested in trying to figure out who's interested in us.
Yeah.
It's a little bit funny, but unfortunately, there's no matchmakers out there. There's nobody's big sister fixing you up. And so we don't have really good knowledge about who's really interested in our program. It's kind of weird. So, we'll get about 550 applications, and in that group, there's a lot of people that are not that interested in us. They just check the box.
Sure.
And so that makes it really hard for us. And so we have not gone to the steps that some programs have done of asking for a little extra essay or some other sort of thing. And so we don't know of those 550 people if they're really interested in us, or if they're just checking the box. And so as a result of that, we have to figure out which 60 people we're going to invite for interviews without any knowledge about how really interested you are in us. And so that makes it tricky, and it's particularly tricky depending on sort of your program, where you are, and stuff like that. And so I don't think there's anything wrong if there's a few programs you're really interested in sending an email or a letter or something to that program. I don't know what I would do with it if I got 100 of them, but if I got 50 of them, I might look at them and say, hey, these 50 people, at least they wrote a letter. Now, would I read all those letters? I probably would read them. I probably would read them if they weren't too long, But you just have to have some sympathy for the program directors out there like myself that have to go through those 550 applications. I mean, it's difficult. And so, but I think especially this year where it's very hard to tell if you're really interested. We used to always get about 5 or 10 people that would come here and do a study away with us, and so we knew those folks were interested. And so that might be useful. You could use alumni. Alumni of a program that knew you or something, or you could potentially work those channels a little bit. You just have to be a little careful how much you do it if you're not really interested. But all I can speak for, I don't want to speak for all the program directors, but for me, if I got a few letters and said, hey, I'm really interested in Iowa because I grew up there as a kid, and I know how to pig farm or whatever, it would be interesting to me. So I think that's that could be useful.
I would agree with.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. So I would agree with Dr. Oetting saying I have not been a program director nearly as long, but I'm very happy to hear that that I share a lot of the same sentiments and kind of instincts maybe that Dr. Oetting shares. We, will occasionally get emails throughout application cycles, and rarely letters, but sometimes emails and things like that. I would say, I think I've been a program director for 4 years. You start to get a pretty good sense of like, is this an actual, like, are you really interested, or is this just a cut and paste email that you're putting together and sending to, every program in the country? That will not, it's kind of like reach out to your mentors and have them reach out to us. If I don't know your mentor, I mean, I'm sure, I would assume Dr. Oetting does too, and we just get a lot of random emails from people that I don't have any idea who they are that's recommending somebody I don't know. And that doesn't carry a lot of weight. But if you, either have an actual connection or interest, I mean, I look at a lot of applications from people that all are training in New York or in California, and I don't know that they have a huge interest in coming to Columbus. But we get an email that's like, actually, my parents, they got their, degree from Ohio State, or I have an uncle and he won't shut up about the Buckeyes. And how they're much better at Iowa than football and things like that. Then we may kind of like, often that my coordinator gets those and she may shoot that to me and say, hey, you want to look at this application again, or this person may actually have a connection. Or if you really comb through and you really are interested in our program, for a while, only a handful of programs had the internships, and we kind of, got ours relatively early. And so people would reach out about specific things about our program, that will get, more traction. I mean, I can skim emails pretty quickly, and if it's just a boilerplate, I'm interested in, program because of your great faculty and your tremendous research opportunity. I mean, that's not going to go anywhere. But if you have a genuine interest in a few programs, I would reach out. I think it would probably help. But to echo what Dr. Oetting said, don't bombard us with a bunch of, just generic kind of emails, because that's not really going to help anybody out. It's not going to help you on this call or anyone that's applying that's not on this call. So, be a good team player. The other thing I would like to echo what Dr. Oetting said is this is going to be a crazy different year for you guys and for us. We're trying to figure out the opposite side of this, just as you guys are trying to figure out, I didn't even consider what's going to be in my background for my webinar interview until Dr. Felsted mentioned that. I was like, oh man, I don't know what's going to be in my background. I'm going to rearrange my bookshelf or something. So, we're all in this together, but I do think one of the other early presenters had kind of mentioned, like, ophthalmology is a great specialty. People are really friendly. People really want to help and help each other. So don't panic. I think in the end it will work out. I'm always shocked at how well the match works out. Every single year, I mean, we see the people at the SF match. I see Damien every year at AUPO, and I'm always like, I can't, it's just amazing. People end up where they're supposed to end up. So believe in the process, even in a year like this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hendershot. We're getting a couple questions from the members in regards to applications. Is it advised to apply to more programs now? And how will this affect the number of interviews being offered?
I don't think I would say apply to more programs. I mean, I think, when the program directors get together as a whole, as we do every, or a lot of us at AUPO, we always are pushing the SF match to kind of figure out a way to get people to apply to less programs and really just apply to programs that they really want to go to. Dr. Oetting alluded to the 500 plus applications that we all get, and it's just a lot of work to weed out who's actually interested in our particular programs. That's like half of my job. We are not changing the number. I mean, we had a meeting last week about, what interviews are going to start to look like with our chair and our program coordinator and our program manager and our med student educator. We'd all just sat down for an hour to try to get our heads around this. I don't see a reason to interview more people. I mean, our interview days are going to be, for some normalcy, structured very similarly as best we can, at least right now as we're looking at that. And I know the SF match is kind of looking at ways to make sure the system isn't gamed from the other end, to make sure you guys aren't interviewing at 5 programs in one day. That's not what we want to have happen. I mean, we want the interview day to still be a day. We're trying to craft that so you get the same sense of being at Ohio State virtually as if you were there in person. Not like, put your scarlet and gray tie on, interview with me and 2 other people, and then switch into, black and gold and talk to Dr. Oetting and his team, and then switch into, maize and blue and talk to Dr. Meehan at Michigan. It's got to be we're trying to kind of keep it similarly structured.
All right. Any other questions, you guys, or anything else you wanted to? I know we've got actually quite a bit that are coming down the pipeline. Harris, Sheena, Tamzid, Rachel, Ryan, anything that you think we ought to point out while we have these people on the line?
Yeah, we have Dr. Lindsay on as well too, if she would like to share some insights from her program.
Absolutely. So I'm the program director at Vanderbilt, and I would echo a lot of the same things that Dr. Hendershot and Dr. Oetting have mentioned. We are looking at a virtual interview process this year, and we're really trying to ramp up our virtual experiences for medical students. That's something that's very
I think we've lost her. Are you still there?
Can you guys hear me?
There we go.
Okay. It muted me for some reason. It's gone from something that's nice to have, those virtual opportunities, to something that really is a must-have now. And so I think we're really trying to make those opportunities meaningful for you guys. In terms of the question on how to reach out, I would very much agree. Please don't bombard program directors with a lot of generic emails that will not serve your purpose. But ophthalmology is an extremely tight-knit community. Program directors kind of all know each other, and chairmen know each other. So I would ask around your department if there's a program that you're particularly interested in. Try and find somebody there that knows someone at that program, someone from your home program, and have them reach out on your behalf. Because I think when I get a request to, hey, take a second look at this application, if it's from somebody that I know and trust, I'm much more likely to act on that than if it's just a generic request. In terms of applying to more programs, I would also strongly discourage that. I think people apply to far too many programs already. And as Dr. Oetting and Dr. Hendershot mentioned, it is difficult for us to figure out who's genuinely interested and who's going to be a great fit for us. And you know, we want to be a great fit for you as well. And so I would say, you know, keep it where it is at the very least, if not less. And then interviews, you know, we're in the process of figuring out what virtual interviews are going to look like. There may be more opportunities if we have sort of a two-tier interview process. That's something we've tossed around, of having like a very brief sort of audition interview, or a let's get to know each other a little bit interview and figure out if you're really interested with just a portion of the faculty, and then have those, you know, with a bigger group of applicants, and then have those kind of go on to a second round of interviews that would be more like our usual. I'm not saying that's what we're going to do yet, but it's something we've tossed around. So that might give people additional opportunities that wouldn't have sort of made that final 55 cut for us, that we might get to talk to them a little bit preliminarily before the big round of interviews.
I had a kind of a follow-up question as well for program directors that are on the call. So, you know, we've been hearing, you know, to reach out to programs and have your mentors or faculty reach out and kind of use networking. So the majority of people on this call, they don't have a home program. So, you know, what are ways that, you know, you recommend them finding people to even reach out? And are there any things that, you know, programs are doing to kind of look for some of these students? Like a lot of the DOs don't have home programs, or some of the smaller MD schools as well. Is there anything that's being done on the program director side to identify some of those students that may not have that ability to get someone to, you know, vouch for them?
Yeah.
And I think what you guys are doing here tonight is fantastic. You know, just reaching out through social media, reaching out through other venues to connect. One great thing that's coming out of COVID is that we're able to connect on a wider basis, even if it's not in person. And so I really commend you for the kind of thing that you've done here. Again, I think that somebody mentioned private practice, you know, going to private practices in your community. Another resource is VA hospitals. We are not accepting medical students from Vanderbilt right now. Our students are not allowed back on campus until June 1, but we have had medical students at the VA because there were a little bit different set of rules at our VA for whatever reason. So if you have somebody that can mentor you who's a VA faculty member, that might be another way that you can kind of get a foot in the door. And then research, absolutely, you know, just kind of reaching out to programs either near you, an academic center nearby. We all have projects that we would love to have a medical student help us out with. It's a good way to get to know someone. It's a good way to show your work ethic and your initiative.
I think those are all really good, valid points. I never even thought about the VA, but yeah, as an early medical student, you know, it is so important to just start seeing what you can do and get your hands wet.
And kind of another reminder. Sorry, I just wanted to say, so to remind you all, we have that document. If you email me that list of mentors, for those of you that don't have home programs, we have a list of faculty and residents and fellows who are willing to mentor you this cycle, especially for those of you that don't have a home program. So make sure you reach out to me, and I'll share a Google link of that document right now into the group chat as well.
I think also to echo, you know, about networking and opening up alumni networks also is important. Everybody on this webinar realizes how important the coordinator is at all of these programs. They're the gatekeeper, and do not underestimate their power and responsibility and ability to help you. Meredith Hest is commenting that, you know, please be patient with coordinators as they're working from home. They have logistical challenges. Their response time might be less or delayed, but don't ever underestimate a coordinator's power.
Hey, David, this is Tom Oetting again. I think anytime you're making contact with a program, assume that person is evaluating you.
Absolutely.
Even if it's the person that's driving you from the airport, especially in Iowa City where we know everybody. Just every contact that you make, you're on stage and try to make the best of it. But I want to just emphasize one more time, for those of you who don't have a home program, if you you know, if you're really interested in our program and you start off with that tale, which is appropriately sad in this setting, and you said to me, but here's the reasons why I'm interested in Iowa, or here's the reasons why. Especially if you throw in if you gave me 3 or 4 good things I could do in a virtual interview, that's what I'm really searching for right now. Then I would pay attention to that. But just think about it from the perspective of the programs you're applying to. But I would pay attention to that. You know, if you sent me an email, I put my email on this. You could send it on social media if you want it. You know, if I get 100 of them, then I'm going to regret that. But there's only 29 on this call, right? So you know, isn't that right?
There's over 100 on the call.
Oh, I'm sorry I said that. My thing says 29 right here. Anyway, it's
yeah,
just
math that to some extent.
I think it's particularly important if you don't have a home program, of which there's not that many, right? That you, if you feel like you're lost and you need help, you know, I would reach out to you.
Thank you, Dr. Oetting.
But David, while you're here, could you? I want people to think about what is the best way to do a virtual interview. What would be the best way for you as people looking at a program? How would you get something back from that? Because I know that Lindsay sounds like she's interested in that. I'm certainly interested in that. Anybody have any ideas for that? You know, as you're looking at programs, what can a program do to give you insight?
Dr. Oetting, are you asking the panelists? Are you asking us? Or are you asking other program directors?
I'm asking those of you who are applying now.
Got it.
As you apply to programs and it's going to be virtual, how can programs do something in that virtual format that will give you enough confidence to move you and your family there?
That's a good question. You know, if I were applying and I could only look at Iowa through a screen and your program through a screen, I think the number one important thing that I'd want to know is, you know, what type of person would be training me, and getting to know them. And I think that's going to be hard to compact into a 45, 60-minute quick tour. And so, you know, just high level stuff, you know, here's your first year mentors, here's, you know, who's going to be teaching you cataract surgery, the caliber of person and how they're going to teach you. I think those are all really important things that I would be looking for. Can anyone else chime in on what they would want from the virtual interview?
I just wanted to mention, I think maximizing FaceTime with current residents will be extremely important to learn from their experience. You know, usually that social time we have the night before the interviews where we can hang out with residents and ask questions. I think that's one of my favorite part of my interview experience. And I think if we can find a way to establish that virtually, I think that will be really, really valuable for the candidates.
Okay, thank you.
I might add something too. I don't think you guys can see me. This is Ryan. And I think looking back on the interviews I had that felt more personal versus less personal, I think a virtual interview definitely runs the risk of feeling very impersonal. And I think something that makes it feel much more personal in any setting is just familiarity with the application. I think that on both sides, the applicant's familiarity with the person who is interviewing and vice versa. So I think I would definitely prioritize like a high degree of familiarity just with the application materials, and then maybe that the applicant has done some research and learned about the person who is interviewing.
Dr. Chadha has mentioned that New York Eye and Ear will be planning to host some informal webinars with our residents so students can learn about our program. So yeah, I think frequent face-to-face interaction is kind of the common theme that we're seeing here.
Yeah, it seems like University of Utah and Emory as well are doing these virtual days with their residents, and they can kind of do these private Zoom meetings with applicants. And a lot of the people are commenting in our chat that they would like the residents and attendings to be separate in those virtual meetings, and that's important to the students. And we also have Dr. Ruxana Mirza on as well. If she would like to comment, we would love to hear her comments as well.
Is her microphone on?
Hi, so I'm from Northwestern. Congratulations on putting this together. It's wonderful. Just to give you some resources, there are some resources that will be coming. Sorry, I think I just randomly got me. So there's resources from the AAO and the AUPO that should be helpful, and the SF match, frequently asked questions, I think will be really useful. But just some practical advice. I would say, I think that about the letters, I think the letters of recommendation will be super important this year. And developing that mentorship will be really important. And I would suggest maybe reaching out to your program alumni would be very, very helpful. Those are people who, I know there are some people who talked today who were the only, the first student who matched, but many of you may be in a situation where there are several people who went into ophthalmology before you. And I find that alumni are very, very invested in their schools, and that may be a way of really developing a mentor. The other thing is, there are probably historic schools that are kind of sister schools, and I would definitely reach out to them. As far as the AAMC, the recommendation really was no away rotations unless you don't have that home department. So students who don't have a home department are going to be prioritized over other students. So I know from I'm involved in the AAO, the AUPO, and the SF match, and I know that everyone is really, really very interested in meeting these needs. And I think very shortly there will be programs that are not associated with a medical school. That list will come out, and I think that will be really helpful for this group. As well as identifying which students don't have a home program. And so I would look at all the websites, the AUPO, the AAO, the SF match. But I do want to assure you that everyone is really, really invested and engaged in this process this year. And I assure you, if you are very interested in ophthalmology, you should hold on to that and find a mentor. I know that there are several people from, including Dr. Tooley and several doctors who are planning a virtual mentorship program, and I think that'll be excellent. And then I totally agree with what Dr. Oetting was saying as far as sending a personalized letter. If there are programs that you specifically are interested in, sending a specific interest in that. I get students, you know, obviously this year Northwestern is not taking traditional visiting students, but there are students who will pan apply and they'll send the same letter to every school, and they won't say anything specific about your program. And that really, I would say, is very off-putting. So if you're going to apply to a program, or if you're going to send a letter to a certain program, I would have it be very specific. And you can find out from the website or from your own personal contacts things that can be done. So that's my bit of advice.
Thank you. So yeah, don't do a shotgun approach to a rifle approach to applying. I think that's wise advice. And you know, really, ophthalmology is such a small field, and we all tend to know each other very well at these meetings, like you've said, and reaching out and being very specific on why you want to be at a program sounds like it's a common thread.
I think somebody had asked about the webinars that will be available. Those will be published on the AAO website. Probably there'll be several emails that will be sent out.
How can they find those emails or make sure they're on that list?
That's a great question. I think that all the organizations are trying to understand what the best way to contact students is. What would be your suggestion?
You know, part of me thought, well, that's a good weed out, I guess, in and of itself. The people who really want that are going to contact you for that anyways. I think posting it to your website may be the easiest.
I think the SF Match will post all the resources there, and so we kind of were thinking that anyone who wants to apply to ophthalmology will be going to the SF Match website, so that the resources will be linked there. But I think that they will also be available on the AAO and the AUPO website as well.
Great. Any other program directors on that want to make a comment or share their insight? We've heard from so many fantastic people tonight, and we just want to, again, thank you for tuning into this webinar that we just kind of at random put together. It turned out to be just really delightful. So is there anyone else that wants to comment? Even program coordinators too.
We have a fellow from Cornell as well, Dr. Rosenberg. If he's on, he could hop on and share his thoughts. I think it's
hi guys. I think this is Eric Rosenberg. So
I'm going to make you an organizer here just a second, Eric. So we'll oh yeah, we may just mute you for a second. Now try.
Oh, there we go. I think the problem was on my end. Sorry, guys. This is Eric. I'm one of the cornea fellows at Cornell. It's an amazing thing that you guys accomplished here, and really an amazing step in the right direction for everybody involved. And it's amazing you got all these program directors and everybody to share their insight during this crazy time, and definitely a resource I even wish I had going through this process. And I think everybody here is better for it. And essentially you're embodying what medicine should be, right? Is you're trying to provide a better stepping stone for the people who come after you, which is ultimately the goal of all of this. You know, a lot of what the program directors are saying and everybody else. Definitely a difficult time for everyone. And I would just like to point out that, you know, we're talking about all these different programs and everything, but it only takes one. And I really, really want to emphasize that. I just was helping a young woman out. She came from a DO school, and you know, she felt really down on her luck, and she got one interview, and you know, she did the best she could, and we talked about it for a while. We spent hours, you know, discussing what that meant and how she can advance and proceed, and whether or not she should take a year to do research, or whether or not she should do something else. And I I told her, I said it only takes one. And ultimately, we wrote a letter to that one program, emphasizing how much she wanted to be there and why it was a great fit for her. And originally, it was like 3 pages long, but as all these program directors are saying, their time is really valuable too, and it's important to remember that. And we turned it into a one short paragraph thing about why she would be a great fit there, and ultimately she matched there. Just remember, with that, it only takes one motto, offsetting your career by a year. It could be beneficial to do research and all these other things, but there's still an opportunity cost in medicine. That's an extra year, not at the beginning of your careers, but at the end of your careers. That's one last year that you won't be able to be in the field you want to be in and that you obviously love to do. And those are always important points. And the last thing that I just would add to it, I actually came from general surgery. So don't be afraid to switch or to do something that you're passionate about. I didn't realize I would, be so passionate about ophthalmology until my wife matched into it, and I was doing general surgery, and I liked doing what she was doing more. And ultimately made the switch. And there's a lot of scary points, and this is a scary point for all of you guys trying to match into ophthalmology. And there's going to be plenty more your first day out in practice by yourself, and your first podium talk. And there's going to be a lot of firsts, but never be afraid to make that next step, and just do it wisely. Be considerate of the other person on the other side. Even though you're up there talking, just be conscious of everybody's time, and that you want to be a good fit, and pretty much everything that this whole amazing panel has been saying. You guys have done an excellent job, and I appreciate it, and I'm sure everybody else here does as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rosenberg. I think that you're sort of a sage in and of itself, definitely from the osteopathic side of things, but also just you gave such great advice to, I think, everyone on here of ways that we can look forward and look ahead. And my mind does go to that single interview student that you had, and I feel for them, and appreciate everything you've said. So does anyone else want to comment, or should we go back to Ryan's story?
Yeah, I think we have Dr. Law. If she would like to comment, she can go ahead as well before we return to the presentations. It might be actually, I think it's a little too noisy where she is, so we can probably continue with the presentations.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Ryan, if you'll unmute yourself.
Nice, I'm here, guys. Well, again, thank you to Dr. Hendershot, Oetting, Chadha, Lindsay, Mirza, Rosenberg, everyone for being here. This is just truly impressive, and I really wish I had had the opportunity to hear this maybe a year or two ago. Definitely a huge boon for all you guys applying. I'll try to rapid fire through my stuff because I know we're running short on time. I think maybe just the key takeaways that, again, I want to emphasize are that this is a field where you definitely will benefit from reaching out and getting mentorship. I think we see that demonstrated here tonight with just how many people are here and willing to be extremely transparent and provide really clear-cut advice. I think something that really I should just speak from experience here on is that I, as a third-year student, I heard Harris say he drove up to Grand Rounds. That's something I made a priority to do as well, was to just really participate. And it takes a lot of time, I think, really, when you decide to just be tenacious and commit to seeking out mentors, commit to learning opportunities. A lot of days I was driving 3-4 hours sometimes to attend these Grand Rounds events in the area being like the state of North Carolina. But it definitely pays off. And so I want to just, I think, encourage all of you guys to just be tenacious and do that driving. Just do whatever it takes to find an ophthalmology community if it's not at your own school, like it was not for me. But maybe the other thing, I had a resident that I reached out to a couple of years ago. She said something kind of jarring to me. She said, like, Ryan, you should just be prolific. That's what you need to do. And I hadn't really heard anyone at my school say, Ryan, be prolific. I heard them say, good luck, hope for the best. No one's done ophthalmology before here. But I think that really shifted my frame to, why not try to just do as much as I could, present at ASCRS, like get in some high level stuff if you can. Definitely, again, takes a lot of tenacity to do that driving, and to do that. I think asking for feedback and then actually following through on it is a different thing. And a lot of the time following through on the advice you get is pretty tough. But if you're up for it, then I think ophthalmology is a field where it is there for you. At least that's been my experience. The last thing maybe I just want to say is I think a lot of what we're talking about is, this is a new year. This is a different climate. There's going to be a lot of emphasis placed on letters of recommendation, kind of how you look on paper maybe. And I think I just want to emphasize that it's really important to find people who can do the bragging for you, can really make you look good and promote you, but that we also make sure that we're not the ones trying to do the bragging. I could see that definitely coming across in a very awkward way, especially through a virtual interview. And that's something that I definitely was humbled by in my interview process, was just recognizing all the people who had already done the bragging for me and had written awesome letters, had really paved the way, so that I wasn't in a position where I felt like I had to really say a lot or do any bragging. I think that just gets awkward, and that really, I think, casts you in a negative way. So find mentors. We've put together some awesome resources that should really make this a relatively simple process, and then just allow those people to give you that advice, follow through on it, and then allow them to really promote you as they're able to. I think that will take you really far this year. Thanks for having me here, guys.
Ryan, it's been a pleasure. I remember when you reached out to me 2 years ago, and I say this, I've already told you this, but I was operating with one of our surgeons last week, and he just said, who's that guy that that rotated here? And I said, oh, it was Ryan. He said, yeah, I actually took his application home with me, and I'm gonna have my kids kind of basically try and beat that, because if they can beat that, then they're definitely gonna match. So I'll do the bragging for you, Ryan. Your application was stellar, and you worked really hard. And I think that's one of the common threads that we're trying to show here, is that we all wanted it so bad, we worked hard enough for it. And you also brought up the point that there's going to be so many people that are going to doubt you. There's going to be so many people that are going to tell you you can't do it, you can't match, don't try, your scores aren't good enough, your grades, and you do need to be realistic, and you do need to look at the data. But if you want it bad enough and you're realistic enough, it's definitely possible. So thank you so much. So we'll move into Tamzid.
Hey everyone, so my name is Tamzid. We can go to the next slide. There's really nothing besides my name here. I originally come from Miami, Florida. I did my undergrad and my master's in public health at the University of Miami, and I'm also, like Dave, a graduate of AZCOM in Glendale, Arizona, class of 2019. And I just wanted to go back and say that this is great that we were able to put this together. I thought it was going to be a small informal chat with ophtho enthusiasts, and having all these program directors and other coordinators, it's so helpful. And I really wish, looking back, I had something like this available for me, but we were happy to help. So a little bit about me. I'm actually out of the panel. I think I'm the only one who's a reapplicant. I did not match the first time I applied, and I know what that email feels like the morning of the match, when you're waiting for a good news and it says, oh, unfortunately you did not match. It feels really crushing, especially if that's what ophthalmology is what you want to do, which I did for, even before I knew I wanted to be a doctor, I knew I wanted to be an ophthalmologist, if that makes sense. But regardless, I persisted, and it happened for me. I ended up matching at Larkin Community Hospital in Miami this year. So that gap year that Dave mentioned earlier, like a lot of people are taking time off for research or any other things. I was very fortunate to find an amazing pre-residency fellowship position. There's a handful of them across the country. If you search out for them, you can find them. But I was fortunate to find one in Portland, Maine, which is where I'm right now, and it's been an incredible experience for me. I know we're kind of short on time, so anyone who's in a similar boat as mine, in terms of if you're trying to figure out if you want to reapply if you didn't match, or if you're not sure if If you should, I'll be more than happy to help. I think Harris is, the document that Harris is sending out has all our contact info, and I'll be more than happy to speak to you one-on-one. But if you advance to the next slide, Dave, I just have a few general advice. For me, AZCOM did not have a home ophthalmology program like all of us here, but we did have an optometry school. And if you are in that boat, or if you have access to a local optometry program in your city, they're an amazing resource for you to learn the equipment and learn the exam skills. Sheena was mentioning how she used to, you're an ophthalmic assistant, I believe, but I think any access to a slit lamp and lenses is an incredible experience for incoming people right before auditions start. So I was really lucky to do that. I had mentors in the optometry field who were very helpful for me to learn the exam skills. So when auditions roll around, you want to make sure, I know it's a little bit different this year. We talked about availability of away rotations and audition rotations, but I still think before auditions start, you want to make sure you master everything. You don't want to treat that. They're valuable before, but they're even more valuable now. So I don't think you should try to experiment with auditions no matter where you are, even if that's not a program that's one, your top 3, let's say, but you should definitely treat every audition rotation as the most important 2 to 4 weeks of your academic lives. Make sure that you're reading and rereading, especially on a resident level. Try to get your hands on the BCSC books, which I have, had access to during my auditions. Those are very helpful. Try to keep up with them. Another advice I would give you, if you are in an audition rotation and you have access to the clinic schedule, definitely try to look up schedules before, or look up the clinic schedule beforehand, so you know what sort of diagnoses are coming in through the door. I remember one particular incident where I'm present and attending with diagnosing Duane syndrome. That's partially because I knew the patient before they came in. I knew that was on their chart. So that's very helpful. I just want to make sure I cover everything here. Persistence is key. I'm an example that you'll often have roadblocks, and by definition, roadblocks are not the end of the road. So if you're persistent enough, you can definitely find a way to make it happen. One thing that I struggled with is when you are rejected and it's that crushing feeling that you get, it's hard to stay motivated, but make sure that you don't fizzle your passion out. I think that's very important, that you keep up with what made you fall in love with ophthalmology in the first place, and find experiences. Try to find more things that will only make it better, enhance it, and not let it fizzle away, because I think that's very important. And reach out to people, like everyone else on the panel has said, for honest feedback. Act on it, but at the end of the day, make sure that you make your own decisions and you realize that it's not going to be for naught if you can make it happen. It's actually a very second application when I got that email that said, congratulations, you've matched. I think that 180-degree difference, or from the year before almost to the day, is a feeling worth fighting for. So I'm going to end with that.
Tamzid, can I just play advocate here for a second?
Sure.
When you had reached out to me and I was helping you, kind of go through things, I had told you I didn't think you had a shot at matching a second time. I told you straight up, you're not going to match. The second go around is too hard. The stats are way stacked against you. What drove you to keep going despite me and several other people saying, no, it's not going to work out for you?
I remember that conversation very clearly. It was, I think, a few days after the match. And yeah, you were not the only one. In fact, I think if 90% of the people I reached out to said not to do it again. And that has a place, because like you said, the numbers are real, right? You can't fight the numbers. For me though, I thought about taking a year off to potentially do something I know I will love for the next 40 years of my life, versus settling in and finding something else and always wondering, oh, what if I took that one extra step? So it's a hard decision for anyone to make, and I'm not going to say it was easy, but for me it was a matter of knowing that I wanted ophthalmology, call myself an ophthalmologist for the next 50 years of my life and not wonder. So even though I really appreciated the conversation we've had, you were very honest and forthright, and it made sense. Everything that you said made sense, but I took a gamble and it ended up, being the right one, which I'm happy to say that it turned out that way.
I'm so glad you did. I'm so glad you didn't listen to my advice. All right. Thanks so much, Tamzid. We'll go ahead and move on to Rachel now.
All right. Hey, guys. My name's Rachel. I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama, and went to undergrad in Auburn and also went to med school down there. It was called Edward Baya College of Osteopathic Medicine. It was a brand new school, and I was in the first graduating class, so I feel very, very, very blessed and fortunate to have matched in ophthalmology. I'm currently a PGY1. I'm doing a transitional year at Brookwood Baptist Health back in Birmingham, and I've matched Ophtho at Medical College of Georgia, where Dave is about to leave. All righty. Do what?
Just filling up my spot.
That's right. You can go to the next one. So my story, I know a lot of you might feel like this, and this I know is what I felt like at times as well. But you just got to stick with it and come out on the other side. So for me, I had an early interest. It was specifically the anatomy of ophthalmology that got me interested. I'm the first doctor in my family, so there's no other physician in my family. And I was in anatomy class, became interested, and then had personal experience, kind of walked through my grandmother losing her vision and helped her walk through that and stay plugged in, like socially, and transition to you can cook for your family and now you can't. And so from that, I reached out early on. I was an undergrad and I found a mentor in Birmingham, actually, and she was super great. Shadowed her a lot, and then she also actually helped me get into medical school with applying to med school. We stayed connected, and I really think that just through there, you take one lead at a time and follow it. I stayed connected with her, and that led to another person that I met, and it's just all about networking and taking opportunities that are presented to yourself. Through that, I also found research opportunities. I found volunteer opportunities to get involved with. And then also, for me, a big thing was the away rotations, because my home program did not have an ophthalmology program. And also when I did my rotations, I had to go away from Auburn. And so I requested to go to Birmingham, similar to other stories that you've heard. Wanted to get to a bigger city where there was an ophthalmology program where I could reach out and make connections and network. All right, you can go to the next slide. So that kind of segues into my advice is find a mentor early and get involved. I know I told you that away rotations were really important for me, but I think that during the season, you'll have to be creative. You heard a lot of great advice tonight. Find research opportunities, reach out to residents, use social media. I think everyone I've met in the ophthalmology community is more than willing to help. If you can, do a site visit. I think it is very important to notice what was said tonight. Like, you don't want to bombard programs, but if you are truly interested in a program, do everything you can to get there, to see them in person, to get to know them, to see if you can work well as a team with them. See if there's an opportunity anywhere at any program for you to get into wet labs, sim labs. Like I said, volunteer, go to conferences and lectures. Most importantly, be yourself, because residency is hard. I can speak to that very truly as an intern right now. It's tough, and you have to rely on the colleagues, your colleagues and the residents around you and the faculty. I think it's very important that you have to get along with them. You have to be a hard worker, stay positive and keep going. True to what a lot of my friends have said, I bet I had at least 50 people tell me I would never match and that I should have a backup plan. And I didn't listen to them, and I kept going, and one thing led to the other, and found a lead and just kept following it. And it worked out. And so this is just a picture of us working in the pandemic as interns just last month.
Thanks so much, Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
We've kind of added on some guidance here from the AUPO. you can find this on their website. So I'm not going to go through it because our time is short, and I do want to leave just any last questions. Hopefully we can answer them. But they do talk about USMLE, interviews, research, away rotations. You guys can find all that. And then last but not least, there are 2 websites I think are really important. Number one, iGuru. You see them on social media now all the time. They're awesome. But their website is great. It kind of gathers everything in one, and they're doing a great job. So just keep your eyes tuned to them. No pun intended. And this is an article by the it's published now that kind of goes over a lot of different match data. So go ahead and look that up. It does talk about how many elective rotations and how many applications you should do. And so I think that was some interesting stuff to look at. So I'm going to end the slideshow now and just kind of turn it back over to the audience. Are there any questions? Hey, Sheena, go ahead.
I just wanted to start with one last parting word. I know one piece of advice that really stuck with me last year around this time. I remember I was feeling really hopeless, and I remember I ended up calling Rachel actually, and she gave me some really good parting advice. And I remember she said the words, pull out all the stops. You know, this is what you want. You worked really hard for this. You deserve to be here. And I know that there are a lot of things that feel out of your control right now, given the COVID situation, but there are a lot of things that you can do. And you absolutely should, because you have worked hard to get here, and you can. There's a lot of people out there who want to help you, and we're all open to messages later on. So best of luck, everyone.
I think that's really great advice. Thank you so much, Sheena. You know, I can only echo that too. You know, as I loaded up the car and put everything on the top of it to drive out for my 4 away rotations, 1 month each, with my wife, who was pregnant at the time, and 2 kids, I turned to myself and thought, what am I doing? And I'm just so grateful that I did it. And we all have our sacrifices, every one of us that have matched. So realize that on this Memorial Day, which is about sacrifice, that these next few months are going to be that way for you, and it'll be worth it. Just some parting words of advice from Jennifer Lindsay. She says, program directors do love team players. We also love trainees who embrace a little bit of disruptive innovation and look for opportunities to help their program improve. See opportunity in difficulty and don't give up. And I think that's the theme of tonight. It's going to be hard. It's going to be worth it. Keep going. And if you don't match, and if you still want it, keep going. And with that, I think we'll sign off.